Recording. Watch what you say. And yes, thank you, Kelly. So again, my name is Micah Hunt. I am the host with the most of this virtual presentation Friday that is providing a free hour of CEUs, nationally accredited CEUs, thanks to Virginia Assisted Living Association. And we've been doing these every week since probably about May. And I don't know what that was. Oh, that was a dog. I know what that was.
Yes, that's Loki. I warned you.
We've been doing these since about May and just trying to provide education, information, resources, and just beneficial things for us living and working in senior living to have during COVID. We all know that COVID has been a big negative impact on a lot of things, but I always like to see the positive and the silver lining in this. And because of COVID, I'm doing these presentations and I've been able to meet some amazing speakers. And you all have been able to meet them too. And I'm looking forward to the presentation today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Verna Chisman and Kelly Stranburg, and they're going to discuss the evolution, oh my goodness, I just brain farted. Evolution of engagement during a pandemic. So ladies, I'm going to let you take it away, and I'm going to mute myself now.
Thank you, Micah, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I will be sharing a brief slide deck with you all. We'll get that pulled up. So like I said, thank you, Micah, for that wonderful introduction. We are going to talk a little bit about the evolution of engagement during a pandemic. And before we go into that, Verna and I would like to introduce ourselves so you know that we're not completely crazy being up here speaking with you. Verna, go ahead and do that because I need to do something to the slide deck here because it's not cooperating.
Oh, sure. No worries whatsoever. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we're hoping that you find this useful and giving you some ideas and some motivation as we move through this pandemic. I am Verna Chisman, and I am the president of Allure Wellness and Management Services. I am an independent consultant, a consulting firm for senior living, and I have been in the industry for many, many years, and I'm also co-chair of the education committee for ICAA education. Take it away, Kelly.
And I'm Kelly Stranburg. I am currently the director of wellness for a company called Mather based in Evanston, Illinois, though I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm also going to embark on the consulting journey here in another 2 weeks. And we'll Verna and I out having a good time because Verna and I believe in the power of experiences. So we like to share real pictures of us as opposed to, the standard headshot.
One of the main focus we're going to talk about today, the relationships, and that is what these pictures reveal.
Exactly. So I don't think anything that we are going to share with you today, it's not going to be new earth-shattering ideas and content, much to your chagrin maybe. But what we want to do is take a practical look at how things have evolved in recent months, specifically in regard to resident engagement, and then talk through some practical solutions and what are some basic strategies we can apply to continue to do the best job we need to do for our residents. And so let's just kind of rehash what we've all experienced in our different community settings. What have we been faced with?
Right.
So let's talk a bit about overcoming isolation and decreased levels of engagement. I don't know about you, but when this first started, I was a little naive and was like, oh, we're going to be isolated for 2 to 4 weeks. All right, not terrible. I've experienced that before during, flu outbreaks and different things. Shame on me for thinking we would get our things lickety-split. So then we had to start to come up with some really creative solutions. And unfortunately, we're not fully prepared for what those solutions would look like. Some of them obviously entailed embracing technology and embracing virtual solutions. And we're going to get into that in much greater detail here in a bit. But then we also had to overcome what the media was portraying about us and how we were truly impacting our residents. And were their families able to connect with them? And we'll talk more about that when we get into the technology piece of this conversation. Verna?
Well, I think that is one of the main concerns that has been brought forefront in the industry through the pandemic is the value proposition of living in senior living and living within a community. So how we've had to overcome the perception that is put out there by the media has been such a challenge. And I think that what we need to focus on is all of the positive aspects that we have revealed and reflect upon throughout the pandemic. There are many silver linings that we can portray and offer to the media. The residents have been so resilient and so adapting to the new formatting and the way to connect with their families and their friends. And we have actually taken the time to get to know our residents more so on a one-on-one basis than we had in our formal ways of engaging from day to day. So those are silver linings that we really need to present and focus on to the media and to the families, and share those joyful moments so that they know that the residents really are engaged, that they really are staying connected, and that their health is a top priority as well as their overall well-being.
Agreed. And I think with that, Verna highlights how critical and powerful our own narrative is about how we are continuing to support our residents. If we let a few news stories dominate and dictate what quote unquote the reality is, without us intervening and saying, whoa, 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 at our community, here's what we've done. Here is how we've embraced the safety protocols so we can engage our residents effectively. And what does that look like? At one of my current communities, we have reintroduced some in-person programming and following a safety protocol that was influenced by the CDC guidelines. And the other part of it, though, that I think is important to be able to share is, how are your residents responding to that?
Right.
You know, if your residents, if you've got, 50 slots available across, 6, 7, 8 programs across the week for residents to come out and connect and engage with one another and with you and your staff, and all those time slots get filled, well, we should be sharing that. We should share, we had 80 slots for exercise and residents signed up for every single one. And what that does is it starts to give you some data, loose data, nothing, crazy, but it gives you some metrics to be able to share from a sales perspective or a marketing perspective that, 100% of our exercise offerings have been embraced by our residents because they have felt safe to pursue it based on the protocol we've created and because they want it. Exercise was the number one thing our residents were clamoring for. Even though we were doing these things virtually, via Zoom, via in-house TV channels, but they missed the connection piece. And Verna and I are going to talk a lot about connection here in a bit.
Right. I think one thing too that we need to really emphasize is ensuring that they understand and take advantage of the in-house amenities that they, not only just in the fitness, but all the amenities that they have within the community, and that is a safe environment, such as your salons and any of those spa services that you may be offering, as well as some of the small groups that you can provide to them, because that is an environment that you are following all of the protocols and the regulations. So knowing that they have that ability to enjoy and experience some different lifestyles right within the community, I think is important to point out to them and to remind them that life does go on and that you can still enjoy and really have take advantage of your overall well-being and treat yourself on a day-to-day basis.
Agreed. And when we do that, we are continuing our culture of community and staying connected. That for me has probably been the largest takeaway of this entire pandemic, is that we need to stay connected, and there's lots of solutions to be able to do that. Verna?
There are. I think some of the areas that we often neglect too, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the communities that we've been working with, that they really enjoy having the the smaller groups or having the connectivity right within their home. And due to the fact that they're faced with every day, and as we are as well, many are struggling with incontinence or fear of falling. So having the ability to stay close to their home or right within their apartments or units, it's very comforting to them and secure. So they enjoy having the virtual aspect, and they enjoy having little gatherings right in their hallways, or many communities have like separate common areas as you get off elevators. So having those engagement opportunities really close to where they are in smaller groups is a great way to continue the community culture.
And then, of course, we all know this. There's security, there's a safety net almost, there's clinical support nearby, or as a partner, depending on whether you are a CCRC and maybe it's built in, or you have those relationships with therapy and home health and home care that you have vetted to be partners pre-COVID, but then you've also had to ensure that they were your, linking arms and understanding your safety protocols in order to keep yourselves and your residents safe. But I think that's another value proposition throughout this.
Absolutely.
And that, a lot of times that's been overlooked, and sometimes we'll say lay people out in the community don't understand that there's actually some safety in our settings. And Verna already brought up the salon as example, or if you have fitness spaces, these are spaces that we can adhere to our own safety protocols to ensure, we are doing our best from an infection control standpoint, and you might not necessarily be able to get that fully out in the public. We don't know. And plus, to be able to pursue all of these things that exist within our settings, you would have to go to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different places for that out in, the community at large. And so there's some value to that kind of being housed under one roof, if you will.
Without question. There definitely is.
All right. Technology, everybody's favorite topic right now, right? You're probably like, technology in the pandemic, enough. But I think it's here to stay. And Verna and I are not naive to the fact that everybody's situations are very different across the country when it comes to technology, whether it's Wi-Fi accessibility and what do we get our hands on? Is it personal smartphones and tablets that the residents own? Do we have our own? Do we, have virtual solutions? Do we have content being pushed through resident portal apps? It kind of runs the gamut of what we were already being kind of inundated with prior to the pandemic, but now we have discovered how viable these solutions can be to really raise the bar on what we provide. And we're starting to discover, might have been a slow learning curve, but we're starting to discover that by having some of these solutions in place, we are able to provide that resident engagement piece in different ways, but also frees us up in other manners.
Correct.
So for example, if we have fitness classes being offered through the in-house TV channel, and that's one instructor going to do that regularly, it's freeing up other staff to be able to provide maybe different engagement opportunities. Maybe we can still have 6 people come to a strength class, even though that other offering is going on in the TV channel at the same time.
Right. So, I think the first thing that we need to discuss is why, and it's very obvious to us. It is, the technology is a necessity. It is to keep it in contact with our family and friends. It gives them the safety and security. It gives them the opportunities, as Kelly has described, all the different options for programming. And it has given them the, I guess, somewhat of the confidence that they needed. As I said, the residents are extremely resilient. And when push comes to shove, they will adapt. And they have surprised us all as we've gone through this pandemic and really accepted the technology aspect and are ready to get on board. it's a shame that it takes a crisis to push something so that is so imperative to us, such as as technology, and to really unveil and unfold all of those different opportunities that's been waiting for us all these years with technology. We've just not embraced it. We've just gone with, it's not broke, why fix it? We're getting along just fine without it. Now, since it is imperative to have this technology, we're realizing how important it is and think, how did we get along? How did we do this for so long? And why didn't we do this before? So again, we know that there are many struggles with some of the communities as far as accessibility to Wi-Fi, and this is a terrible, I don't want to say it's a 4-letter word, I guess it's a 6-letter word, is budget, that we have to deal with on a regular basis, but we need to reallocate funds and reevaluate our budgets, because I think the technology is extremely important and it's not going to go away. And that is, as we move into the next terminology of how, it's by devising different platforms and offering training. We have the training not only for our staff. And Kelly, I can remember many colleagues reaching out to me and saying, I didn't realize how low the skill set was for some of my staff until we had to get involved with this. So there's a lot of training involved with not only your residents, but with your staff. What I have found is that there are so many, there are those residents. At one point when I was dealing with technology in a community, I was developing a specific platform. I won't name the particular name, but we had what I called super users. So take advantage of those, the peers, and have them do some one-on-one training with your residents. And they seem to be so much more receptive when you are dealing with one-on-one, because they think, okay, if they can get it, I can get it. And they have the time to do that. So let those residents be an extension to your staff. And that is how you can develop your technology within your communities to the highest level, and then get more of your residents on board.
Agreed. Thank you. Verna touched on this just a little bit, but I think we've all realized just how critical family communication and connections are. And whether we've been able to do that through some sort of virtual offering, whether it's through a resident portal app that you can also push things to the family, or nothing wrong with old school, you guys. Like sometimes paper letter, going to have a little more impact when it comes to the home and an envelope, and they get the time to open it and process it. But it's been so critical to keep families in the loop. And then there's, of course, the connection piece of what do the residents want? What do the residents need? What do the families need? And sometimes the expectations were a little difficult to deliver on, and I'm sure a lot of you experienced that just like we did. And I think depending on where you are in the country, and I know most of us probably, mid-East Coast, we've been a little spoiled that we have nicer weather longer into the year. And so we've been able to do physically distanced meetings or get-togethers outdoors. And so that has helped. But then it kind of comes back to technology. How do you do that in a way where you can ensure family is connecting effectively? Has anybody, and you can just put it in the chat box, has anybody had the opportunity to apply, the Eversound solution to
great example
visits? Because then you can ensure that they can hear effectively. And so there's lots of ways to go about this, but I think more than ever, we have recognized, and it's not that we didn't realize how critical the family connection was before in communication, but again, the pandemic only highlighted it is probably one of the top priorities. And because we get going in our day-to-day operational roles, sometimes it just doesn't float to the top the way it should. But this opportunity has really elevated the need for that, and that we need to ensure it moving forward.
Absolutely. I think we've all somewhat, as we get into the relationships and so forth, we've really taking that extra effort, as I mentioned before. we realize that we do have the time now, because it is so much easier through the technology. Then, now granted, you can never ever take away the feeling of a true hug and the one-on-one, face-to-face with your family and your friends. But it's, at this time, this is an acceptable method, and it is a way for us to stay connected, and it is so easy. You don't have to get in your car. You don't have to go out in the bad weather, you have to go out in the rain. You don't have to leave the community. I mean, you can really embrace all of your friendships and your families right from your own home. So I think that is something that is definitely a silver lining in many aspects.
So Verna and I, we're not going to go through and answer all these questions. That's not the point of today, is to go through every word on every slide. But we want you to just take some time to reflect. And we pose these as rhetorical questions of what has the pandemic done for your own relationships? And have you had any aha moments in how you value connecting with others? And have you noticed if that trickles down into your work self? Are you seeing how you have shifted and maybe reprioritized connecting with those who are important in your life? Is it shaping and influencing anything you are doing in your workspace?
Right. Yeah, and I think, like I said, it's definitely made us push that to an effort, that's how it's impacted many of our relationships. I think the aha moment that I had, and I think Kelly and I agree, is how we've seen many of our staff and colleagues step up to the plate. We've really diminished a lot of the silos. We're working together as a team, and to show the compassion that we all have for our residents, to me, has just been amazing. So I think that is definitely an aha moment for me through all of this pandemic. One thing that I think we wanted to point out on this on these different questions is the organizational chart, and we will kind of just go through that through one of our next slides. But your organizational chart does at this point need to be reevaluated. I know that some of your job descriptions have possibly shifted in many manners through the pandemic as we've taken on technology in different roles. And also we've combined positions. So to somewhat lay out the structure of your organizational chart, I think this is a good time to reevaluate that and reprioritize some of the positions. So I think that is something that has definitely developed through the pandemic over these last few months.
Verna, take it away on the SWOT analysis.
Okay. So how many of you, I know most of you at some point in your career, have gone through a SWOT analysis? The slide hasn't come up just quite yet. So, Kelly, let's see. I think she forgot to switch the slide. So the SWOT analysis is, of course, your strength. Kelly's slide didn't come up on the SWOT analysis. On the strength, the weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. So the strengths that many of us have found, I think, again, is the diminishing of the silos, working together as a team. I'm finding that to be a strength. But what we really want you to do is just kind of take a moment and go through this. Have you done a SWOT analysis since COVID-19? I think it's very important that you take that opportunity and reevaluate your roles, your team members' roles, and the overall community roles. Weaknesses, I think many of us have discovered the different skill sets that are required now. Where we've I guess, identified some of our staff's weaknesses, and where we can find where they are going to shine and where they haven't. So those are, again, going back to the opportunities of reevaluating your organizational chart. I think you need to really analyze where it has developed to. You need to kind of flatten your organizational structure and combine possibly some of your roles. That way, as Kelly mentioned, you can reassign staff members and really be more productive due to the technology and due to the new roles and new methods of how we're offering programming. The threat's an obvious one that we're all dealing with, and that is the occupancy. But again, as we overcome the value, the perceptions that is out in the media and the perceptions that throughout the country, and let them know the strong and the advantages of being within a community is how we're going to overcome those threats. And
I'm just
well,
going
we're going
to flow. Is there a SWOT analysis on the screen, y'all? Thumbs up.
There is now. There is now. Yeah.
Didn't apologize.
That's okay. No, I rolled with it. It's good. It's good. And when it came up, so it's all good.
That's the other fun part about technology, y'all.
Yeah, there we go. And Kelly has some great examples here. We're going to get into some calendars and programming. And Kelly has some examples here of where we want to just identify and give you some thought thinking processes here. Take it away, Kelly.
Yes. So I think what we're seeing here might not be unfamiliar, but you might be questioning, why is she showing us these? And these examples of a calendar and a bulletin board are not to be overly critical of somebody's hard work, but it is, I wanted to highlight that there's so much opportunity for us as we recognize the need for resident engagement to improve, that we can do better. We can do better as an industry. And so when we look at these calendars and this bulletin board, we might not look at them and think, wow, that's really elevated, or how refined, or how engaging, or how interactive. But rather what we're seeing is a bulletin board that I would challenge somebody who produced this in my community. I would say, is that really the best board we could create to communicate for our residents who are extremely wise, experienced individuals?
Exactly.
Somewhere in our world, we've gotten into this mindset that when you hit a certain age, all right, we're going to cluster you all and we're going to put you in a pocket over here, and we're going to totally serve you and treat you and represent you in a completely different manner. Why? Why do we do this? We all know that if we were to walk into any of our own communities, that we would be challenged with some of the way we do things. And so I challenge you to really think about, how can we really effectively design the engagement piece moving forward? And listen, I'm not oblivious to regulatory requirements, but does every single minute of the day need to be scheduled out? Do we need to do, just because it is a pandemic, does everything need to be passive in nature? I think there's so many opportunities for us to really highlight and identify, does this program impact quality of life, and is it in alignment with my brand and my organization's mission or vision? Mission or vision? It's Friday, y'all.
Yeah, I know. You know, and the one thing that we really wanted to point out is, and Kelly possibly mentioned, are your programs dignified? We are working with very wise residents that have had established terrific careers, that have so much wisdom to share and still want to be productive and have a very viable life. That, you know, we need to keep that in mind as we are developing programming. And so as we see here on the screen, the top one is something that is very dear to my heart, and it is a terminology and a philosophy that I was trained on when I was working with the Greenhouse Project, and that is dignity with risk. And many of our programming and our residents still have, for lack of a better term, their bucket list, things that they really want to do, things that they've always aspired to do, didn't have the time, now they do. And possibly there could be some ability challenges, but yet they still in their heart feel that they want to do this. We need to find a way to let some of those experiences happen. And that is where dignity with risk comes in. Many of you possibly have seen a video that went viral. It was developed, actually started on LinkedIn, and I have shared it with many, and I reach out to me following this, and I'm more than happy to share the link with you. There was a caregiver that worked with a resident in an assisted living, a resident that was in a wheelchair. Every Sunday, he would take this resident out to a parking lot and let him live his dream. And his dream was from his career. This gentleman was a stuntman in movies, and he still wanted to enjoy that thrill of what he received when he was a stuntman. So the caregiver put him in an Evel Knievel suit. I'm not kidding, cape and all. And they would go out into the parking lot. He built a small ramp, very low level as far as incline, but a ramp. And he would take him, that wheelchair, up over the ramp and then let him land. It was frightful when you first saw it, but it worked. And the resident loved it. He was in his own element, and it just gave you so much joy. So this is something that I really identifies and gives you an example of dignity with risk. Of course, you have to take cautions. He had a helmet on. I mean, he had all the safety precautions, but this is something he wanted to do and was very successful for them. Kelly, as you mentioned earlier, avoid the over programming. That is something that we really tend to do. Kelly has her terminology is, it's better to have the quality than the quantity. And that is something that we all need to follow. Having our quality programming really is more important than the actual quantities, because that's going to provide them a better experience and give them purpose, which is the next line, description versus purposeful engagement.
Yes, I get a little crazy in our community settings in regards to programming. I mean that in a good way, you guys. But, you know, I struggle when we hear things, well, that's how it's always been done. Or Verna and I had the pleasure and the honor of presenting for International Council on Active Aging earlier this week, and we shared very similar program to today, and we were getting some really I'm going to call them basic questions. And I mean basic because I wanted to just scream and be like, why is nobody being able to work as a team and talk through these solutions at the community level? We had people asking us, how do we go about introducing new programs to our residents? There's a level of, I don't want to say the word fear, but anxiety over, I want to do something new for my residents. And, you know, I encourage everybody who's in a leadership role, if you have the opportunity to support and connect with your engagement and activity professionals, please let them know, like, I'll be your partner. We're in this together, because a lot of them, they're on an island. And, you know, it's just have some conversations. Let them know they're supported. Have conversations with the residents. There's our greatest resource and feedback tool. And more often than not, we aren't tapping into the resources that are right at our fingertips.
Absolutely.
So get that elevated quality program. You see something called distraction versus purposeful engagement. I think at times over the last decade plus, there have been times where we've brought in entertainment because we didn't know what else to put in a time slot. And I would challenge people that, again, are we having thoughtful conversations? Do we know what the intention is behind our varying offerings? And when we have something that's an entertainer, a speaker, a film, are we doing it to fill time and thus a distraction, or are we doing it with a very specific intention? Right. And there is a difference between the two.
Absolutely. Very good point. And that is where we think we really want to highlight the resident run programs. We have found, and I'm sure many of you have heard this philosophy before, and many of you take part in this, but it is so, so important that we remember that resident run programs are extremely successful. They take their own ownership. They take pride. It gives them purpose. We could go on and on and on as to what the advantages of to resident run programs. And right now, since we're needing different avenues for programming, and you have residents that want to champion some of these virtual programs, let them go for it. A perfect example is resident from a former community that I was at called me and said, you know, Verna, I'm just reaching out. I've got to vent to someone because I went to the mailroom and I recognized a face, but I could not remember this resident's name. I've lived here for 8 years. I couldn't remember this resident's name. And this is a gentleman that is totally with it. In fact, I reach out to him as a mentor on many technology aspects. He's extremely, extremely intelligent. But he said, you know, I just haven't had those connections, and that is bothering me because I am kind of come up with a plan, and I'm hoping you can support me. And he's named it Build Back the Bonds. He's taken the bull by the horns and has developed programs with some of his friends within the community, many times cocktail hours where they stay and they have their dinner delivered at the same time. They stay all together on Zoom and they have dinner and cocktails together. They have some little conversations, their little, whether it be get together over finances or politics or whatever, they still meet. They still have their groups. There's the gentleman that we're always getting together on a regular basis now. Plus he's reaching out to some of the others as well and promoting many programs. He's done all the research and developed many programs that he's offering within that community on a virtual basis. Huge success. And what a relief for the staff. I mean, that is just buffed up their programming 100%, and the residents are really engaging in it. I think another good example that we've had that has been extremely successful was a virtual vacation. We just wanted to share this one with you, where you offer the residents the opportunity to really do some research on where they want to go. Where in the world have they always wanted to go and didn't have the opportunity to do so? So you let them pick their site of where they want to go. They plan out their whole itinerary and their whole trip, all in the, you know, through virtual or through research, through books, however they want to do it. They plan out their itinerary. And as they are going along, they share this with the other residents. They do postcards and send them through their emails and post them within, if you have a platform such as like CareMerge or Touchdown within your community. And that way, that has been like a whole week series of a project or long, a couple weeks. Again, that is quality over quantity, and it has been extremely effective.
And then, of course, and Verna already highlighted this a little bit, but continuing to embrace the varying virtual solutions that are out there for us, whether they're things through Zoom, even like this, if they're things on a tablet, some of you may even have the IN2L system, or you may be using One Day University, or there are plenty of organizations that are offering free virtual tours and education sessions, art galleries, museums, things like that. And I think, you know, as long as we continue to embrace those in a thoughtful, intentional manner, we can continue to see how technology can be an added value as opposed to just a frustrating thing we have to figure out in the workplace. Because I know there are times where we do feel that way. All right, so now as Verna and I wrap up, because we want to make sure there's ample time for dialogue and questions and answers. And I know Micah will help facilitate some of that with us, but really this entire pandemic, when you think about the resident engagement piece, is really a time to reflect. And has it changed our idea of wellness or resident engagement? And you all know there's a million terms for what we all do, but has it changed it? Or is it just merely changed how we approach it and how we can continue to provide it despite the challenges around us in the workplace and what is going on for us as staff and for each of our residents in their own ways? And what does that mean moving ahead? And Verna can talk to you a lot about approach and language, so I'm gonna let her share that insight with you.
Right. Well, you know, there is, I guess it's very well known, you hear many times the new normal, but what we'd like to focus on is what is the next normal, how we are moving ahead and redefining aging. I think it's important for us to really try and reflect on the fact that we need to reinvent retirement. It's not the same. The potential for our experienced, and that's another terminology that Kelly and I are using, instead of seniors and older adults, they are experienced adults. You know, their potential is so much grander than what we ever anticipated. the unattainable is now obtainable. So we need to rethink and reinvent the retirement. And many times too, you are going to realize that those that are in their 70s and even 80s are still continuing to work, still having a viable life and a thriving life. So we need to redefine that language, come up with new language that better suits the demographic of what we are developing. Longevity is here, and it is only going to increase tremendously over a period of time. Many times we have heard, and if any of you attended the ICA conference, you heard Sandra speak about the third stage of life. They are in their third stage of life right now. They are not ending or in their final chapter. They're in the next chapter of life. And that is something that we need to embrace and really focus on for our marketing and our programming, is that third stage of life is just beginning the new chapter. And those are the approaches that we need to take. We need to remember that they are viable and their whole life is just beginning on a new chapter, and what they've educated for so long. And how we bring about that longevity is something we really want to focus on. There's a terminology that I learned from a conference that I attended a few weeks ago, Metabesity 2020, and it's really stuck with me. And it said inactivity equals inflammation. And that is so true, because as you go through and you are not active, then it does affect many of your physical and mental abilities. So keeping active is really a benefit to your health. And that is something that we really need to concentrate on as we move through the next generations.
And then I just want to say one final comment, because I know we are at 14 minutes before the top of the hour, is just what does autonomy look like moving forward for our residents? Autonomy is something that has been researched. There is a direct connection to how well we age. If we were able to be autonomous, and that looks different for every single one of us. And so I think for many years we have, sometimes reacted in almost a panicky fashion, like, oh my gosh, Joe Smith never comes out to anything. But what is Joe Smith doing? Do we know that intimate information about who Joe is as a person? Maybe he likes to practice, as I've started calling it, healthy solitude. So maybe he's not self-isolating due to a condition or some cognitive decline. Maybe he's not experiencing loneliness because maybe he does some remote consulting. Maybe he's happy to talk with family on the phone. Maybe he likes TV programs and reading magazines. I think it's an element of life in community living that for so long we've been like, oh, they're by themselves. But and trust me, I get how catastrophic isolation is. But do we know why somebody wants to be on their own? And I think being able to dig down to the why behind the why is so critical sometimes, and often that is overlooked. And I think the pandemic has highlighted how well some of our residents are able to function on their own without us programming every minute of the day and being all up in their business at times. So I would encourage you all to keep that in mind as we move forward and we do see more people comfortable with being on their own. Mm-hmm. And now, Micah, I know we probably have some questions, and I would love some people to share some examples of kind of what has been going on in your world. Was there a challenge you were confronted with in regards to resident engagement or connecting with families, and how you went about solving that?
Right. Another point too that we wanted to ask about is, how's your leadership support been? Have you been able to really get the initiative and the support from your leadership teams and have them understanding of the true meaning of all of the and the importance of the engagement and taking the technology and the next steps to the next level? Have you been successful with this, and what measures can you share with everyone?
So anybody raise your hands or raise your reaction hand to ask a question. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Come on. I know you guys have been commenting and chatting of the amazing information. Oh, Can Verna expound more on the relationship between inactivity and inflammation?
Yes, yes, yes. So, I'm sorry, but if I mute, then you won't be able to hear me. So you're going to have to listen to my talk. But anyway, so in that regard, and it has been proven, and much research has been done, that as you're not active, then your inability, your mobility definitely declines. You do have depression setting in. You do have, if you have a chronic disease, it does compound with it. So not only keeping your physical, but your mental usage, your overall well-being in a constant engagement helps with your health tremendously. You do not have as much stress, which again, that causes inflammation. You don't have as much anxiety and depression, which compounds many of your chronic diseases. If you are having some mobility issues, keeping your strength up so that you can have fall prevention. So that inactivity equals inflammation in the fact that it is going to increase any problems and health issues that you may have. So keeping that in mind, that this is a mindset and this is a shift in perception that you need to keep engaged mentally and physically at all times in order to really increase your longevity in a fulfilled life.
And then Miss Gina Bloom, I see that you've raised your hand.
Hi, Gina.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning.
Gina.
Nice to meet you all from a very rainy and cold central New Jersey right now.
Oh, I won't tell you what mine is right now.
I know, I see you wearing a shirt and I'm like, oh my gosh, she must
I'm
be
in
somewhere
Florida.
very warm. Yes. So I appreciate your comments, and I'm coming in from a different perspective. I used to offer in-person educational programs to 55 plus senior living and libraries before the whole world shut down. I
Okay.
have since transitioned to Zoom, and I found your remarks interesting because I've run across the gamut, when reaching out to communities where I've literally had lifestyle directors say seniors don't know how to use computers and hang up on me. Okay.
They're so wrong. They're so
No,
wrong.
and I'm like, but
They're
60% of
beyond
senior, like beyond telehealth, are engaged. I have like 85-year-olds on with me, doing educational programs. And, then also the other side where they are starting to embrace, I've been seeing some evolution, albeit very slowly, that
Sure.
this is, I know this is an overused phrase, the new normal, but, the virtual is here to stay. And
Yes.
and as a background in communications, trying to have lifestyle coordinators like understand the problem that's present,
Right.
and
Right.
and that it's
And embrace
urgent,
it.
and it's urgent, and embrace it, because as you mentioned in the beginning, that we thought this was only going to be a few weeks, right in the beginning we're like, oh yeah, by Easter it's all going to be good. Yeah, and then by summertime and by fall, and now we hear, that we're in for the haul. How do you have any suggestions? And also, I'd like to connect with you offline about this, regarding, trying to get folks to see the problem that's present here, and this is their community, and how you're just passing by your entire community.
Kelly, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, just because I've implemented a lot virtually in the last 7 months, and adoption was slow at first, but it was greater than we anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of ran the gamut in whether it was people in their 70s, 80s, or 90s who were challenged. It really comes down to an individual level, and what have people been exposed to, and are they, y'all, Verna and I are the dog people, I'm sorry. It really comes down to, have I been exposed to technology in a way that's made me want to embrace it over the years, so that as new solutions have come to market, I'm willing to embrace those. And so I challenge people, because I would disagree. And now that for a lot of individuals and companies, we're in a place where you can do some one-on-one coaching, physically distanced. I think that's where adoption comes from, though, is repetition, educating, and being able to be patient, to be able to show your residents how to embrace these things.
Right. And they have been extremely resilient and adaptable. One thing too to point out is when I was discussing, the restructuring of your org chart, you may think about having a staff member that is dedicated to the training of technology for your residents. That way they can get that one-on-one training on Zoom and get that level of being comfortable, and so they're not intimidated, or have him train the other residents, the train the trainer aspect, so that you can get, really reach out to the masses of your community, where maybe you only had 100 residents that utilized with that structure of your org chart, having that staff member and then the trainer. It can multiply to 400, depending on how large your community is, 500, that in a quick manner, plus they feel comfortable with that. It is truly just having the adaptability. I have residents, and I'm telling you this, I have residents that I reach out to as mentors and advisors for my consulting firm. So they do have that ability. Don't underestimate them.
And then, did I answer your question, Miss Gina?
Yes, thank you. Also, it was more from like the lifestyle director perspective, where you're trying to get them to adopt a new idea. It's easier to create diamonds in your house than to get somebody to jump on board with anything new, right? That's just how we are as people. There's certain people that will buy the first model year of a car, or, get the latest and greatest gadget. And others are like, you know what? I'm still going to stick, with my tea kettle on the stove, boiling water and doing the traditional. And that's the challenge I've been running into, is getting this adoption.
I would challenge them. I'm not afraid to say, come on now, like, been in a community, like, come on, you're going to sit here and actually tell me as the lifestyle director, you have residents that aren't embracing these? How are they talking to families and friends? And how are they, I would push back. I'm sorry.
Plus, you have to think about too, this is a marketing opportunity for them. They need to get on board, because they're going to need that capability within their community in order to get new prospects. There is no question about that, and family members are going to demand that.
So
they need to get on board for the safety of their own job. So yeah.
Right, but I've had people literally hang up on me, or not. That's the thing. It's like, I'm a talker, I'll push back, but at what point?
They are missing out. I think possibly having examples, and we can give you lots of examples for validity, and giving her the reassurance that this is to your own advantage and for the benefit. You are going to shine. We can make you look like a superstar.
So I think there's some conversation between the three of you that needs to happen. I have two more questions before we close. Ann Anderson had her hand up or her digital hand to ask a question, I think.
It was just the second half. It was just the second half about inflammation. If you have anything for lay people, because I see this among my in-laws and their friends, that they're finding that they're sitting, so that it's a lot less painful if they just sit. So if you've got anything offline,
how do you overcome that? Kelly and I have a lot of good.
Okay,
good
that'd be great.
Good.
And if you'll
therapies to do that with,
I encourage all of you to connect with us on LinkedIn. I welcome.
Again, there'll be an email following this call, as you all know, with their contact info. So feel free to reach out them, connect with them on LinkedIn, and they'd be happy to build more on that. That's why this happens.
Absolutely.
There's more to be done after the call.
Support each other.
Something for lay people would be great. Thank you.
One last question from Susan McKinney. Has anyone explored utilization of a robot for virtual connections and or sessions? I'm the skilled setting. We've had great success with it. Curious from the ALIL perspective.
Cool.
I
am so thrilled to hear that.
This is where Verna and Kelly will go.
I was going to say, there's some diversity here.
Verna and I don't always share a brain, you guys. Yeah, I think there's ways that they could be helpful, and until a robot, if we're going to replace people with a robot, then the robot can't cost more than the human wages. That's kind of where I'm.
Oh yeah, there are definitely perimeters.
And what is, again, it goes back to the education and the training, how much effort and time and energy goes into making sure all of the staff knows how to use that robot. If we have turnover in staff, like it's those that I'm not entirely like, listen, you guys, I've been to CES, Consumer Electronics Show. I've seen the robots. They're awesome. They're cute. I would like to stay in a hotel where a robot delivers my towels. I think that's kind of, but I'm still challenged with the feasibility of how effective of a tool that is when we all know how tight all of our margins are, and they're really expensive. If
They are very
have us
expensive.
all pilot them for free, heck yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. There are perimeters. They're useful in different manners, but they can be. So definitely.
So to move on, we have a few other. So Susan McKinney said this robot is a screen for Zoom connections in classes, is what it is. And then, hold on, we had one other question from Kyle Robinson. I have a question for either Verna or Kelly. So go ahead, Kyle.
Verna, Kelly.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle. How are you, my friend?
Doing well. Appreciate this discussion. So as a technology provider in engagement and wellness, one question that I have is that we believe that the people who are in life enrichment and doing that great work at communities should be, number one, on the leadership team, and number two, driving a lot of what's happening from a strategic perspective. However, we don't see that a lot. And so my question maybe for this group is, how can we as either third parties or people who are working with you help to encourage communities to do that, and for this group of people to really be seen as the heart and soul of the community that really helps driving strategy?
Absolutely. Good question.
I think Verna and I both agree with you on those sentiments. I think it's going to take a pivot in the industry and, for lack of better words, an uprising to say, listen, this is what you're selling. This is what the marketing team sells, is what, your activity, your life engagement, all of that is often implementing and putting in place and developing out. So it's like, how can there needs to be a better balance between the marketing narrative and what is actually going on in the building. And the way to do that is to ensure that life enrichment role is elevated and seen of value. Like we want it. And right now we're seeing how critical it is, but it's still not rising to the surface as critical as it needs to be. And I'm a biased person when I answer that, for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, but Kelly and I, even in the presentation we did last year, Kyle, and again, it had to do with the org chart. Wellness is not, or the life enrichment or the engagement is not always been a top priority. We feel that it is important, and God, kudos to all of you, that there should be a chief wellness officer within every community that embraces that innovation, that embraces the opportunities, because that is what's going to make your residents thrive. And you're right, it is the heart and soul of every community, and they need to be recognized and validated for that. So Kelly and I will be always, and all of our colleagues will be right on that soapbox, really supporting that and validating that for them. And we're happy to help you and reach out in any way.
One of the ways that we're trying to help do that is provide the data to the C-suite, especially, to say, look at what your team's doing and how well it's helping residents, so they can have some quantitative data to back that up. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Super.
Well, I think there's a lot of discussion that still needs to happen after this call. Unfortunately, it is after 12, and
Still got to go back to work.
Still got to go back to work, and tummies
lunch.
probably are rumbling because it is after lunch now. So with that, I'm going to stop this recording.